वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are into the 10th lecture in the series of BI monthly lecture series. I thank you all for the overwhelming response to BI this initiative. I have pleasure in welcoming BI stalwarts Shri Baburao Shakarwar, Vice President, Shri Pradeep Nagvekar, Honorable General Secretary, Shri Gyan Madani, Honorable General Treasurer, past presidents, trustees and other senior functionaries from across India. I also welcome all the participants. The widespread global outbreak of COVID-19 has resulted in termination and suspension of various contracts including tenancy agreements. Generally at the time of execution, the contracting parties often agree on the terms and conditions to be followed when the performance of the said contract by either of the parties is affected by act or circumstances that are beyond the reasonable control of the parties. Under the normal scenario, tenancy as a general rule is terminated based on inaction of the tenants in violation of the rental or lease agreement. Inaction of the landlord or owner in violation of the rental and lease agreement by mutual agreement or by any order or decree from the judicial court or tribunal. But in conditions like present situation, the tenancy is frustrated when without the fault of parties, obligations under the agreement as originally intended becomes impossible to fulfill as a result of unforeseen circumstances. We will be listing today to more details of such cases and solutions to them from Advocate Pooja Thakkar. I welcome you all once again and wish you all a very interesting and informative evening. I request Shri Sunil Matreja, Honorable General Secretary BI Mumbai Center, to formally introduce Advocate Pooja Thakkar. Thank you. Now I hand over mic to Sunil Matreja.
Hi friends. Advocate Pooja Thakkar is practicing civil litigation since the past 4 years. She joined the practice of her parents, Advocate Rajendra Thakkarji and Advocate Jyoti Thakkar Madam, who gave her direct exposure to argued cases. Independently in Bombay High Court in the first month of practice. She was also briefed counsels in Supreme Court. She has also given 2 speeches before various organizations like All India Women's Council on topics relating to grounds of eviction under Rent Control Act. She has also written articles which have been published on Lawyers Club and have delivered webinar hosted by Kutchi Advocates Welfare Association. She came 3rd in Government Law College in final year and has worked for magazines and television channels prior to venturing into legal field. Thank you.
Pooja, ma'am, the floor is yours. Just a second. All participants are requested to send their queries in the chat box. And after Ms. Pooja Chhattar has finished her speech, people who want to ask queries, they have to raise their hands using the facility in the app. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm absolutely grateful that I got the opportunity to deliver a talk on this topic, which has been gathering some importance in the last few months. In my practice, which is a lot of property matters, I happened to come across a lot of cases in the last few months where I was sought opinions. And in fact, there were some applications also filed as to what happens in a situation like COVID, where you have a long lease or a commercial lease or a license agreement where huge stakes are involved. Now, due to COVID, where we are as of now today, a lot of people have gotten affected at many spheres, in business contracts, in many other positions and places. But out of that, I'll be dealing with two such agreements today, that as to what the position of law is and what the courts have held. And even as of now, the urgent applications that are being taken up in the small causes court and so on, as to what is the view of the courts in such a situation. My intention through this webinar is to enlighten everyone as to if you're a lessee or a lessor, what are your rights and liabilities, and how is COVID affecting you, and if it's already affected you, then how to get out of it. And for the licensor and licensees as well. Of course, there are other business contracts, and even for RERA, there is a special thing altogether. But today I'm going to try and, in my talk, deal with these two aspects mainly. Now, to begin, to come to the main topic, the question here is that lease and license, these two terms generally are used very interchangeably in when we talk to people about it, or even in courts for that matter. People refer to lease and license as almost the same things, even today, despite of the awareness and everything, but that is not what the case is. So before I get into the legal aspects and the complications of force majeure and the clause, I'll have to inform everybody that lease and license are completely different things, and the laws that they are governed by, even that is completely different altogether. Now, to begin with lease. Now, lease is what? There is a creation of right in a particular person. And lease could be perpetual, indefinite, or for a particular period of time. But a lease holds a far more dominant value and it's much more powerful as compared to a license. Whereas license is something which is more like a permission to use. Of course, licenses are also given for like many years and so on and so forth, but that does not give somebody a very stronger right than beyond just a mere permissive user right. If you are a lessee, your rights are far stronger. The laws that you're dealing with are also comparatively give you greater protection. Even your eviction is not as comparatively as easy as compared to in a leave-in license agreement. So in that case, first to begin with lease, they are generally governed by the Transfer of Property Act and the Maharashtra Rent Control Act. That is mainly the two acts that are governed in a relationship of a lessor and lessee. Lease is also interchangeably used with tenancy. Now, as far as tenancy is concerned, we still have many old buildings in Mumbai which have the protection of the Rent Control Act. They are governed by Maharashtra Rent Control Act, where there is a statute which are governed by the Transfer of Property Act. Now, Transfer of Property Act being the parent of Maharashtra Rent Control Act, that deals with most of your registered leases. Right now, during COVID, most people who are impacted are the mall owners or the large giant corporations and commercial premises which have taken or given on lease their shops for a particular period of time, because there are huge security deposits involved. There's a huge loss of rent and so on and so forth due to the lockdown, and even after that. Because even after the lockdown, the footfalls, although the malls may have opened right now, but are they actually getting that revenue? So in that respect, as far as if there is an agreement, because as far as the act is concerned, you do have a liability to pay rent as a lessee, but the beginning of the act, the section 108, it says that subject to the contract to contrary. Now, Transfer of Property Act allows you to enter into a contract where you can actually turn around and say that I will not pay rent if these are so-and-so circumstances or in such and such situations. But unfortunately, in most of the cases that I have come across in the last few months, very few agreements actually, although force majeure clause may be there, But seeking that exemption or that waiver of rent, that has not been there in most of the agreements. And that is why the talk and the webinar I thought would be essential to bring some light upon. Now, in order to ascertain whether you are liable to claim rent or pay rent, first one must look at the document, because document being the Bible of everything, one must look as to, do you have a clause of force majeure in the first place? Do you have any such clause? Now, force majeure generally refers to an act which is superior to us, which is beyond our control. So in that respect, that's acts of God, violence, war, so on and so forth. But very rarely you will find a pandemic word in that, or any such word which can really which depict the present situation of COVID, or like a lockdown. So in that respect, if you don't want to pay rent, or if you want to really avoid rent because you're genuinely facing financial losses, you must check if you have a clause, because that is going to determine whether you can or you cannot pay rent. Because as far as leases are concerned, the liability to pay rent is very strong and it's very high. If you have such a clause in your agreement, one must look at it very carefully and in detail to determine whether the word pandemic is there. Most likely the pandemic word may not be there, the present word. And in that situation, one must at least look at the second half, where it's mentioned that due to government order or government interference or change in laws. So if these words are there, they could also relatively grant you certain protection whether to not pay rent, because it's due to the government order that the lockdown was enforced, due to which most of the people could not really use the premises for the commercial purpose for which they had let out for, and could not use it for the business for which they had taken up for. So now for that, you need to, the second step would be to check whether you have that any such protection further, whether there is a lockdown or a change in law, which generally is the case. Now, if that is there, one must also identify as to whether you're using the premises or not, because certain people, despite of lockdown, they could have used the premises. For example, if you have a software server lying in your office and you've taken your premises to just keep softwares, now those can be active despite of a lockdown. So if you're availing benefits, even though there's a lockdown, for example, banks were never really shut down at any point of time. So there are certain people who have been using the premises even during lockdown. They cannot claim such benefits of not being able to pay rent. So in courts, what's really important right now is a careful analysis of the clause, that whether you have that clause or not in the first place. And after you have the clause, you need to particularly have it mentioned that if this such a situation arises, I will be exempted from paying rent for so and so period till I'm not being able to use the property. Now, if that is what the situation is, if this is what if your lease deed contains, you are in a far more better position than anybody else, and you can definitely approach the court. Or the first thing you must do as per the agreement would be to inform your lessor that I will not be able to pay rent as per clause so and so of the lease agreement due to so and so reasons, and I am protected by as per your agreement. Now you need to inform that at the earliest. Generally, most agreements have this 15-day time gap where you can say, where you have to tell the your lessor that I'm not being able to pay rent and my business is shut due to the lockdown. Now, a lot of people have not actually in time informed their lessors. So that period, they will have to pay rent. It is only when you inform your lessor that I will not be able to pay rent, that's when your waiver period begins. So time is very essential at this point of time, that if you're not being able to use it, you must inform your lessor at the very earliest, and especially if there's a particular time period given, then in that time period for sure. Now that brings me to another aspect, that if you do not have the clause, that is with most of the people right now, that they do not have a clause. But before I get into that, I must also say that I recently came across this matter, which was in Small Causes Court, which was between PVR versus CR Mall Retails. Right now there was a dispute going on, and there's an order of August 14th. Now, PVR was paying a rent every month of about 90 lakhs to the CR Mall Limited people. And of course, due to the lockdown, the theaters they were asked to shut down. People were not allowed to go out or even use the theaters. And PVR Limited actually had a force majeure clause in their agreement that if there is something that prevents people from using the premises, there should not be payment of rent, at least for that particular period. Despite of that clause, they paid the money to the CR Malls Limited people who were holding the property, without prejudice or on protest. Despite of that, the owners, the lessors, they terminated the lease. They urgently moved an application in small causes court, and they asked there was a termination of lease notice issued to PVR Limited, despite of the fact that PVR did pay the monthly rent under protest. PVR had no option but to move to small causes court during the lockdown, and they asked the honorable courts that an injunction may be granted so that they may not be evicted, or the premises may not be, they may not be thrown out of possession without the due process of law. So in that respect, it was heavily argued in court, and the honorable court was of the opinion that even though there is a force majeure clause, even though they have paid the rent without protest, still there is a termination notice given. And in that case, the lessees, PVR People Limited, they are required to be given protection and injunction, and they did get an injunction that until the suit is finally disposed of, they cannot be evicted. Because the rights, in that case, it was of a situation where there was an urgency, and they had already received a termination notice. So what I'm trying to say here is that even though you have a clause, there are still people moving to court to evict you. And even though people are paying rents, still there are cases being filed to evict them, because of course there are huge stakes involved in those matters. Now, in the second aspect that I'm dealing right now is that what happens in a situation where you are a lessee and you do not have any such clause which can help you exempt from payment of rent in such a situation. Now, what happens here is, as far as lessees are concerned, they cannot they cannot take the safeguard of frustration of contract, because a lot of times people are discussing that can we just do a frustration of contract of the lease, but that cannot come into the picture because a lease is a concluded contract. So there is nothing, it's not an executory contract, there's nothing remaining. At the time of execution, the right is created in the favor of the lessee. Now, in such a situation, Section 56 of the Contract Act that deals with frustration of contract, that cannot come and safeguard the lessee. The lessee cannot turn around and say that since the performance of the contract is no longer possible, because I am required to make the lease void. That is no such provision as far as lease is concerned. And in fact, there are even various judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court and various high courts since the year 1958. One of the famous judgment is of Raja Dhruv Devchand versus Harmoinder. And there also the courts have held that where the lease is concerned, where transfer of property is concerned, you cannot come around and say that there is a frustration of contract, and since the act has become impossible and it's difficult to use the premises, I'm not going to use it and the lease is void. That is not permissible, as far as that's what Supreme Court has held in various cases. So if one is a lessee and there is no such clause in their favor, the ideal scenario would be to pay the rent. Of course, before they do that, there is always a scope of negotiation and conversation. But as far as Transfer of Property Act is concerned, they are very strict, and there is a liability, clear-cut liability in the statute itself that the lessee has to pay the rent. There is no such exemption. At the max, even if they want the lease to be terminated, that cannot happen in the present scenario, because the Section 108E clearly states that the lessee can terminate the lease only in certain situations. That's where the premises has become permanently unfit for using or habitation. But the situation where we are in right now, there is nothing of that sort, that the premises has become permanently unfit to use. So in that case as well, the protection of 108E of Transfer of Property Act cannot really come into their help as well if the lessee wants to terminate. Best option would be to negotiate and if not that, then hand over the keys. Because if you do not hand over the keys, the chances are that you are getting the liability of means profit being the damages that they can claim for unlawfully utilizing the property despite of the termination. So as far as lease is concerned, one must be very careful about the fact that if there is no such clause of force majeure, they may the chances of not paying rent are drastically low. As far as the license is concerned, now as far as license is concerned, the courts have been license being a contract and being just a temporary use of a premises for XYZ period of time. In that situation, it is extremely imperative to, again, the first step being to check your agreement, because the stakes of frustration of contract are very high. Supreme Court last year in one of the in 2017, as a matter of fact, in a judgment of Watchdog versus CERC. Now, in that case, the Supreme Court has clearly stated as to how high the stakes can be or situation has to be before you can render a contract as void. So Supreme Court, in that matter, what really happened was that there were bids that were called upon to supply electricity to people, and in that Adani had won the bid. Adani Power Corporation, they had won the bid, and as per the consortium, they were to give electricity to people at a particular tariff and at a particular escalable price, and so on and so forth. Now, what happened is, over a period of time, to generate electricity, they were sourcing coal from various parts of the world. Now, what happened really was, in Indonesia, the price of the coal suddenly increased, due to which the price at which Adanis could supply electricity, that also had to be increased. Otherwise, there would have been a loss of finance for them, because they had gone into that bidding price only with an understanding that the coals have been of so and so price. Now, thereafter, what happened was, the Honorable Court, Adani went before the Honorable Court and stated that we are not being able to perform our contract, and at this price, we're not being able to offer electricity to the people because the coal prices have increased. And the contract is financially unviable for us. And in view of the same, we want to frustrate the contract under Section 56 of the Contract Act. In that situation, they also had a clause of force majeure. In fact, it was also mentioned in the agreement that in a situation where financial liabilities arise or there's some change of law and so on and so forth, what happens? So the Honorable Supreme Court was of the view that, first of all, if you already have a clause of force majeure in your agreement, then you cannot come around and frustrate a contract. You cannot seek protection under Section 56 of the contract. You cannot say that since the performance has become impracticable or impossible, I will not be able to come and perform the contract. Supreme Court has stated that if you have a clause of force majeure, then you will be governed by that clause strictly. And then you cannot take the second protection that people get under Section 56 to make a contract void. So that was one of the first things that came out. And the second thing that really came around was the fact that even if there is a financial difficulty in completing a contract, that does not make itself a void contract or an impossible contract or an impracticable contract. Even though there's a financial difficulty, which a lot of us must be facing right now due to COVID. And a lot of people may argue that I had taken the premises, say, to sell shoes or to sell something else, and now that is not happening. So I'm having a financial difficulty. I cannot pay that. In that case, the contract should be void. But that is not what the courts are of the view. So having a line of argument stating that since there's a financial difficulty and I cannot pay, the courts may not accept that view that easily. But there is an alternate to that. If you line your arguments in a fashion that the agreement was for a particular purpose, and if you make that as an express condition that I had taken the premises only for this, and this was the main essential reason to take the premises on lease, and that has not happened, that has become impossible, then you can possibly take the protection of Section 56 of the Contract Act. Because one must also keep in mind the past judgments. There have been many judgments of Honorable Apex Court, where the Honorable Apex Court has dealt that in what situations can they allow a contract to be frustrated. The courts have been of the view that if two people are entering into a contract in all their senses, keeping in mind and foreseeing everything that could happen, then they cannot be allowed to turn around and say that now it's inconvenient for me, now it's not possible. So even in the Adani matter, the Honorable Court had held that if in Indonesia the coal has become expensive, why don't you source it from other countries? You can get it from anywhere else, because that was never a part of the contract that the Adanis will be sourcing the coal only from Indonesia, and that is why they are giving coal at so and they're giving electricity at so and so price. That is not anywhere mentioned in their PPA agreements. So if that is not an essential part of your agreement, just because something is difficult or inconvenient, the courts may not really accept that argument. So probably the another way to work around that situation would be to make it appear or make it come across that the agreement was for this particular purpose only, and since that particular purpose is not happening, I'm required to make this frustrate the contract. Because even in that situation, like even if you're frustrating a contract, that still won't give you a right or a chance to avoid payment of rent for a few months. Like, as a matter of fact, there has been a judgment that came across before the Honorable Delhi High Court somewhere on 21st May. In that case, this was after the lockdown, of course. So in that case, what really happened was that there was this the person who was running a shoe store in a posh locality of Khan Market in Delhi. Now, what happened there was that there was an eviction decree passed against him, and he was just continuing the appeal. But even to continue the appeal, one has to pay the rent at market rate, as per various judgments like Atmaram Properties and Supermax and so on and so forth. So even to continue an appeal, you have to pay rent at market rate. And he was paying rent of about 3 lakhs since last year. But during the lockdown, his business was completely shut down, and he was not allowed to sell shoes for a long time. And he approached the Honorable Court stating that I'm not being able to sell any shoes. I have no business. My rent may be suspended. I may not be allowed to pay the rent for that particular point of time. And that was one of the first judgments that came out in relation to this during the lockdown period. That is a very nice and a lengthy judgment, and that deals in that the Honorable Court has extensively dealt with all the situations and has dealt with Contract Act, the Rent Control Acts, as well as the Transfer of Property Acts. It really clarifies the entire position, and the Honorable Court has held that no, despite of the fact that you are not being able to do any business, we cannot really offer you any suspension of rent at this point of time. But the court did allow them to defer the rent by a couple of months. So he had to pay, but he did get some time too, because the Honorable Court was of the opinion that for certain lessors, for certain landlords, this may be the only source of income that they also have. So it would be unfair to really suspend the rent completely and allow them to not pay the rent. The Honorable Courts have, and in fact, as a matter of fact, in premises which are governed under the Rent Control Acts, there the chances of avoiding rent are practically nil, because there anyways the rent is so low and there is a statutory obligation to pay rent. So in that respect, avoiding rent would not be the most viable option, because in that case, but however, like again, there is another side to this. However, the question is that the courts have offered suspension of rent in certain cases, and however, they are not COVID related, but they have in certain situations where the landlord could not offer the premises to the tenant to use. That's when a tenant can come around and say that I did not get the premises even though I wanted to, and that is the reason the landlord cannot get rent. But that is when the landlord avoids it. In many situations that we come across, that people are actually using the premises, but just to not pay rent or to get out of it, they have been coming around and saying force majeure, force majeure. However, force majeure is not as easy as it sounds. As I said earlier, having just a clause in your agreement may not really help you to avoid the rent. One must also remember to clear-cut mention in your notice and inform them on time that I'm not being able to pay rent for certain reasons, and that is the reason I may be allowed suspension. As far as the leave-in license is concerned, yes. So if you have a clause, you will have to adhere to the clause no matter what it is, and you must go to probably you can just get the clause checked from some lawyer or something to identify that how much your liability is to pay rent. As far as if there's no clause, then you must really build a case in the fashion that the agreement was entered into for a particular purpose, and that purpose is the dominant purpose for the agreement, and that is the reason the agreement is required to be frustrated. But that is again an argument which the courts may or may not accept, because the stakes are very high if you want to frustrate a contract. So that is with regards to that. Now, however, there are certain issues where there are lock-in periods. Now, there's another issue that comes around, that some premises have been taken on leave and license, and there is a particular lock-in period for say 6 months or 12 months to, that one lessee cannot terminate the contract in that time, then what happens in that situation? Now again, once again, in that situation also, you must go back to the agreement and see, do you have a force majeure clause? Because if you have a force majeure clause, you are largely sorted, because even if there is a lock-in period, you can take that advantage of a clause that I am not being able to use the property, and that's why I want to terminate the lease or the license. But if there is no such lock-in period, there's no such clause, then during the lock-in period, you cannot terminate and get an advantage out of it. You will still be liable to pay the damages that you are required to pay. So most people what they are doing right now is they are in the process of either negotiations. They are because many small owners are allowing for a few months leeway, like deferment in payment of rent. It is not that they are suspending the rent, but they are deferring that you can pay over the time, because there are certain agreements that people enter into. They are on profit sharing basis or revenue sharing basis. So even on that respect, since there is no revenue happening, since there is no profit coming in, the lessors have to bear the brunt of it. And if there is some insurance that people have taken from in respect to certain business, etc., they cannot really take the advantage of the insurance on one hand, at the same time claim some kind of suspension of rent and waiver on the other hand. So as far as the courts are concerned, what they are trying to see is the fact that what how important it is for you, or what was the main purpose of the contract. Like if one manages to make it appear that the contract was only for this, and if that comes across to an argument, that can really hold some ground. However, financial difficulties or mere impracticabilities are not something that the honorable courts are even taking into consideration. Like there were certain judgments where, although it was an English judgment, that one were to supply nuts through the Suez Canal, but however, Suez Canal was shut down. So they wanted to frustrate the contract. However, the honorable courts and the English courts were of the opinion that no, one can go all the way from Cape of Good Hope and other places and still do the same thing. So this is just an example that just because for temporary purpose you're not being able to use your office or store or so on and so forth, that does not mean that permanently it is not possible. And just because financially there are going to be some losses, that does not mean once again that that you can avoid payment of rent. So the best option that I have come across, I have thought recently, is the fact that negotiate as much, talk to your landlords or talk to your lessees, because the property markets are such that the lessors may not find a new lessee that easily, and the lessees also may not. So both want each other at the moment, and that they may need for times to come, because the pandemic doesn't seem to go anywhere. With the numbers increasing every single day, it's going to be a while before people really start heading out to malls, to theaters, or to any such places, or to shop the way they used to go. So, and that is obviously going to impact the business a lot. And obviously a lot of people have shut down their businesses, are at the verge of shutting down the businesses. And that is a lot because the landlords are not being able to give any such kind of an exemption or a waiver or even deferment for that matter. And of course, for many landlords, this is their only source of income. So even that may not be the most practicable thing to do. But having said that, as far as residential premises are concerned, there the question of suspension or waiver doesn't really come into picture at all, because we are in a space where we are actually utilizing our premises. We are all at home. We may not be able to use our offices, but we are definitely using our residences. So seeking a waiver or an exemption for your residence premises is practically not a good way to go approach the court, because if you're using it, you cannot say that I want some kind of a waiver or a suspension or a deferment. Although there was a circular that the landlords are not to evict or ask for rent, but that was merely an advisory circular. It was not that it was binding on the act or something of that sort. It was just to tell the landlords that do not press your tenants to pay the rent till this particular period. But however, that period is also gone. So the space that we are in today, it will be imperative to pay the rent, because as far as the acts are concerned, be it the Transfer of Property Act or be the Contract Act. There is no such clear-cut situation where rent is avoidable or suspendable, because in fact, in one of the cases, just to give example, Supreme Court in the year 1968, there was a case where this man, he had purchased an agricultural property in Punjab, but due to the partition in 47, that particular land went into the Pakistan side, and he could not really use that land for his agricultural purposes. He had to come back here in India, and he could not use that land to grow the crops. So he went to the court and he said that I want a refund for the amounts I've already paid to the lessor, because I can't use this land for the purpose for which I had taken it. And the Supreme Court in that judgment also has held that just because you cannot use the land by going back there does not make your contract void. You cannot ask for any such refund on that count, because the land is not destroyed permanently, or it has not become unfit to utilize for the purpose for which. It is just that you cannot go there because there could be riots. But the Supreme Court has consistently held in many such judgments, even thereafter, that a contract where there's a lease in situation, one mustn't really ask for any such refund, or one must ask for any termination, and the liability to pay rent will always be there. And even in the lock-in period, there are cases going on in the Bombay High Court with regards to the same. And even in there, the honorable courts have been of the opinion that when people are taking a premises on leave and license, and there is a certain lock-in period, that clearly implies that there are a lot of investments done to make the property usable for a particular licensee. There is a lot of cash involved, payments made to make the property in a particular condition. So if somebody is really investing in the property to make it usable for the licensee, then they cannot turn around and say that now I don't want to use the property for so and so purposes. So the lock-in period has been entered into keeping in mind all of these things. And the honorable court have been of the opinion that even in such a situation, you cannot really turn away from your liabilities and responsibilities to pay the rent. So as keeping in mind all the Delhi High Court judgments, the Supreme Court judgments, and even other judgments, it has come to the view that if you do not have a clause of force majeure, you are not likely to be able to get any such waiver for rent, because even termination is something at the which one may not be able to do. But at the same time, it is important to discuss and negotiate with your landlords and see that what is the best possible scenario in such a situation. With respect to that, I am really opening up myself for questions, and if there is any clarification needed on the same. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Chairman sir. Madam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Questions, shall I take? There are no questions in the chat box, and nobody has. I think I'll take up the questions which we have received from the registration, in the registration form.
Yes.
There is one question from Mr. Priyank from Vasundhara Builders, Mumbai. Is
Okay.
force majeure applicable on rent? I think you have answered. Is force majeure applicable on rent in redevelopment projects?
See, as far as redevelopment projects are concerned, now they would be RERA certified. Now, once the property comes under RERA, they will be governed by the laws of RERA. Now, as far as RERA is concerned, they have time and again come up with various circulars. Now, there was a circular which stated that the builders get a 6-month time from 15th March, whichever projects were to complete by 15th March. All those properties have gotten a period of 6 more months to complete the projects. And even despite of that, there is a clause in the act itself which allows you to take 1-year extension in such periods. So many developers who have not taken that 1-year extension already, they can at the moment get the 6-month extension that they have already received through a circular, and the 1 year that already the act provides. So in that respect, as far as the development is concerned, that really doesn't come too much under these transfer of property acts and so on. There is a special act for the same, and there are circulars that have been issued. So at least till September, the builders had the time to complete their projects. And even after September, now due to the circular, what really happened was that many home buyers, they went to the Honorable Bombay High Court, and they said that this is absolutely unfair because there are several flat purchasers and who have already booked and who have paid substantial amounts for their properties, who were to get their possession in March. But the construction is not stopped because of the force majeure of COVID. It is delayed because of the acts of the builders itself. So they must not be allowed any such blanket protection of 6 months. So, but however, that has not been really paid. Like that has, the courts have said that no, this because this, laborers have gone back home, there is no such possibility to continue the projects. So the honorable courts have held that no, that till September at least, everybody has the protection. So the 6 months extension. So the builders they get some, they don't have to complete it that time. But thereafter also, there is a period of 1 year they can claim if they haven't done it already. So as far as the redevelopment projects are concerned and which are under a particular, under RERA, they will not really come into in consideration of this Transfer of Property Act and so on. There is already a special act that deals with that, and there are various circulars that are coming out time to time, and which will even come further if there is any such.
Okay. We have Mr. Kasi Visweswara Rao from Visakhapatnam. Visweswara Rao, sir, can you unmute yourself? And also, anyway, I'll ask his question. I had sent you this question. The lease agreement is entered for 7 years with a condition of cancellation of agreement if continuous 3 rent payments are due to owner. He failed to pay the lease amounts continuously for 2 years after 6 months from the date of agreement. If we approach court, it will take much time. How can I get justice within a short period? This is a generalized question actually. I have sent you this. I think you must have,
see, as far as getting justice in short time is concerned, even if you go to the courts, see, if you don't go to the courts, you may not get justice at all because you may have to really negotiate, and negotiation is only till a point the person understands. So you can probably start with a situation where you can appoint a lawyer or a mediator who can really sit with you, both the parties, and let both the parties know of their rights and liabilities. If the parties understand, it will be the fastest thing for you to do, because then both of you will have to come to a center point and get the best possible deal. But that generally doesn't happen that much. So even if you approach the court, there may be some delay, but there may not be that much delay because there are ways to speeden up your matter. Like for example, if somebody is a senior citizen, so in that case, the matter can be expedited, and an application can be made that I'm 60 plus and so, and I have been in so and so situation and I want the matter. So the matter will not be tried like any other matter, but it won't get over very soon as well. So there are ways to speeden up a matter, but that cannot be a reason to not approach a court, because from what I understand, that the substantial amount of rent has not been paid, I believe, from what I could make out from the question. So I think the stakes are high here, and if negotiation is not happening, the best is to approach the honorable court and get an order at the earliest possible. But at the same time, in this situation, it's not about COVID at all. It's more since before, I believe. So I hope the termination notice is already sent, because
he's there. He's there online. He's there. You can ask your get clarified, Mr. Rao.
Namaste, madam.
Namaste.
Yes. Actually, I didn't send any notice to him. I'm negotiating. Actually, I'm calling him daily, but he's not responding now. It is completed already 3 years, but my agreement is up to 7 years I have given actually. Lease agreement is given for 7 years. First 6 months he paid. Later he is not paying any price till date. So, but sometimes he is responding and he is postponing like that. But he is not doing any business in that premises. Simply he put some equipment in our premises. So he is not doing any business. That's why I am also not forcing, but I am asking. Still, our premises is with him only, but he is not paying any amount.
Okay, I understand. See,
Rao sir, I think is a general question. Madam, it is not actually related exactly directly.
Right,
you can take it up. I'll give you madam's contact details. You can take it up with her, so she will guide you properly. Then, madam, there is one no, that contractor issue, I'm not taking the question. There are some.
My question is, if I want to go to court, how many months it will take, madam? Generally, 2 years together it will take, like that. They are telling
So-
that's the.
It is a residential property. It's a commercial property, I believe.
Yes, yes, it is Auto Nagar industry.
So, ideally, the first step is to send a notice, a termination notice, and if you have to see if they reply to that, and if they if to give them particular amount of time to reply, and if they do not reply, you can move to court and move an application for expedite also, and at least take an injunction, because what happens is that people fear going to court. Now, what happens here is, if he's already keeping his equipment, he may also put some third person in your premises and derive rent from the same. Then you will be in a place where you'll have to litigate with two people, one with him and one with someone else who has come in the possession now. So since your lessee already doesn't want the premises and is just using it to keep equipments and so on and so forth, there are very strong chances that he may induct somebody else, and then it will lead to complications and multiplicity. So ideally, if you want early justice, then you should have not waited for that long. You should have in fact sent a termination notice at the earliest, that your lease is terminated forthwith, and thereafter you can decide when you want to move to the court, or because once you send a notice, there is always a fear to pay rent. So in a general situation, I'm saying ideally the first step is to pay rent. First step is to issue the notice, and then to go to the courts. Court will take a couple of years. It may not be like a 6-month thing or a 12-month thing, but it is better to go at the earliest than waste time, because eventually you may have to go. Nobody gives up on possession that easily. So at least send a notice and have a look as to what the response is.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. We
So I
have
have
Mr.
question. Madhu.
We have Mr. Tushar Desai. Sir, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have a question that if in a leave and license agreement, there is a clause of force majeure, but then it doesn't cover specifically pandemic. So under the force majeure clause in leave and license, can they stop paying the rent or claim that a rent waiver should be given?
Okay. So in that situation, as I said earlier, if there is the pandemic word is not mentioned, in that case, one must also see in the clause if there is any such wording, like due to the government interference, or due to change in law, or due to any such government orders due to which you can't use the premises or can't perform the terms and conditions of the contract, then you can still use the force majeure clause and invoke section 32 of the Indian Contract Act and get protection of the same, because pandemic is not there in most of the agreements. But what is actually there right now is the fact that due to any such acts of government preventing us to use the property, so that really protects. That can really protect you, because if you're not being able to use the premises due to the lockdown, so pandemic may not necessarily may have affected you or your business or the contract. But what happened after the pandemic, that is the lockdown, that can be your key reason to claim protection under section 32 of the Indian Contract Act. So I'm sure that particular word is there in most of the clauses that I have come across. The pandemic word is not there, the epidemic is not there, but what is generally there in most clauses is that due to governmental act or governmental activity, I'm not being able to perform or I'm not being able to use the premises. Then and only having that is not enough. There has to be a mention further that you're allowed to be exempted from payment of rent or license fee. So you must read that clause very carefully, that even if there is no pandemic, it is fine. You can still be protected, but you need to have those other words in your clause at least.
Our other words are like, most of the time it is that if government law is there and it gives you right than what you are having today, then automatically contract is terminated on the day before.
Right. So in that situation, there are two things. Either the contract gets terminated depending on the clause, if you have mentioned that, or if you mentioned about exemption from payment of rent, then you can seek exemption also till the particular lockdown period is there. So till the time you can show and prove to the court that you are actually unable to use the premises due to a government order or a government notification, you can avoid payment of rent for that period, provided that is there in your agreement.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Pradeep Nagavekar, our National Secretary. Then after that, Mr. Anand Gupta is there.
Yes,
Nagavekar
madam.
sahib.
Madam, good evening.
Good evening.
I have two questions. One, as a owner, I don't want to get suffered by this pandemic situation, and I want rent from the. If agreement doesn't mention any force majeure or any pandemic situation, can I claim the rent from the to whom I rented my property?
Okay, so from what I understand, you're talking about a lease out here. It's not a license, it's a lease, right?
Hmm.
And have you entered into any agreement? Is there any
No, just
agreement?
asking. I am going to.
You are going to. So if you're going to, then as per Section 55 of the Maharashtra Rent Control Act, it is very important, and in fact, it is mandatory for all the landlords to compulsory enter into a written agreement and also register the same when they're giving their premises to for tenancy or leave-in license. Now, if you don't do that, there is also imprisonment to the landlord, and also there is a fine. So whatever agreements that are entered into for leave-in license or lease after the year 2000, it is important to register, because what happens is if you don't register, then whatever the tenant says that these were the terms and conditions, whatever the tenant says, that will be given importance over what you say. So it is a landlord's responsibility, and the law has cast the burden upon landlord to get the agreement in writing and registered at the same time. So
No,
if you're doing, so I'm going
agreement will-
further.
Yeah.
So if you want to protect your amounts, now first thing is that you enter into, because most people are not entering into a registered agreement. They don't know that it is compulsory. It is generally notarized, or it's just a rent receipt is given, or so on and so forth. So first step is to get your agreement in writing, because the landlord, the burden is upon the landlord. And in that agreement made or prepared, your clauses will have to be drafted in such a fashion that such situations and even other such situations which may come in the future due to COVID or due to any such things, they cannot prevent the lessee to pay you the rent. So everything will depend upon the drafting of your agreement, because if you want protection, then you have to have everything in writing, and you have to have everything drafted in a fashion that, be it COVID or be it in future, because now they are detecting some more strains of COVID, and we don't know what new things may come up. So this, like earlier, force majeure clauses were just copy pasted, or they were not given so much importance. But from now onwards, all force majeure clauses will be given utmost important compared to other clauses. So you need to have your document worded very carefully that even in such a situation, the lessee has to continue to pay rent to you. The rent will not have any direct consequences with whether you're using the premises or not using the premises, or if there is a government lockdown and you can't use the premises. So it is all going to be about drafting your contract very well to protect it. Because if you are drafted well and if you're protected, then court of law will always support you. Court of law will always ensure that you get your rent no matter what COVID is there or whatever is happening. So even if you're giving your premises for you're letting it out, you just make sure that your contract is in writing and registered, and it covers the clauses very carefully that you have to pay rent no matter what.
But it is not binding on me to have that any protection to be given to the lazy.
What kind of protection?
Is it binding on me?
No.
I can go with what you have said. I can do that agreement with the,
Yes, you can. And it is binding on the lessee. Of course, it is binding. And another thing, what you could also possibly do is that you could take a decent amount of security deposit at the start, because that is also right now helping many such people, the lessors, because the lessors who had taken a good amount of security deposit are right now being able to deduct it before they return back the amounts, because many lessees can't pay rent. They're just not being able, they don't have the financial capacity only to pay rent. So they are also saying that you deduct it from my security deposit because I have nothing to pay you. So that one thing, but also the fact that whatever you draft and whatever your lessee or the tenant signs and whatever is registered, that will be binding and will be enforceable in the court of law.
Thank you, ma'am. My second question to you is, generally, there are many SRA projects are going on. Premises are vacated. Generally, builders pay 12 months rent by giving 12 checks to the tenants. And contract period, contract period is of 3 years, and checks after 1 year he refuses to pay for one and another reason, if project gets stalled, under circumstances, what tenant should do?
Now, is this about SRA or general topic?
SRA.
SRA. Now,
SRA
see,
or
SRA is,
redevelopment also.
yeah, so as far as the redevelopment, as I stated earlier, is concerned,
Yeah, that is.
they are strongly governed by RERA. Okay,
RERA,
so
yeah.
RERA is already giving them some time, which we will have to wait for, because on 15th March to September they have given that blanket period where the builders have the relief to extend their project, and plus RERA also gives 1 year that, you know, if there are such epidemic like situations or any such situations where they can extend the project by 1 year. So in that case, we will have to wait. But at the same time, you can go to the court and ask for your amounts under Section 18. You can ask that there is a delay, so at least I may be granted, given the amounts, and till I get the possession. There's an interest that is given on the amounts that you've already paid. You do get certain interest. So that can be moved under Section 18 before the RERA, and RERA does grant relief in normal situations when there is a delay. Now, as far as COVID is concerned, the cases are going to start coming in now. Because after the relaxation time given to builders is over. So thereafter, the new cases in RERA will come in. But earlier, whatever happened in RERA, the courts were giving, the tribunal was giving some amount for the delay in the project. So you must move under Section 18 before RERA.
What about SRA?
SRA will have its own tribunal. Now, first of all, in everything, you must first check your contract, what agreements have been entered into. Is there any such situation mentioned that what happens if there is a delay? Because in most documents, there will be a case that if there is a delay, then what? If there is extension, like some grant is given or whatever. So checking your agreement and checking your document, that is the main thing. That is the main thing that will give you protection, and that is something that will be there in every agreement, in SRA agreements also.
Yes.
Okay. Nagagar sahib. Okay na?
Okay.
Anand Gupta sahib. Tushar sir, I'll come back to you. Mr. Anand Gupta.
Pooja ji, see, yes. My question is not at all related to COVID. My question is, I am a owner of 2 of the building in South Mumbai, which is fully tenanted, and I want that the rent paid by these tenants are so low that there is hardly any money to maintain that building or anything. I want this building, either rent should be at market rate or I want them to be evicted. What should I do?
See, as far as tenanted properties are concerned, the law has given various grounds on which the tenant can be evicted. Now, first of all, you need to identify if they're paying rent or they're not paying rent at all. Because if there is a standard rent that they're required to pay. Now, if they're not paying even that low rent, you need to send them a notice under 15(2) of the Rent Control Act, and they get 90 days to pay rent. And if there is some work done, and you also have a right to ask for 4% increase every year in your rent. But I understand even 4% is not enough, keeping in mind it is South Bombay and keeping in mind today's time and so on and so forth. So you can either go in for redevelopment, but if you also want to evict them, there are many grounds, as a matter of fact, that if these tenants are erring tenants, now some tenants are violating the law. For example, they are not paying the rent. For example, they're not using the premises. Now what happens is there are many tenants who lock the premises for since it's a very low rent, small rooms, they lock it and they stay somewhere else. They have their own ownership properties. For six months, they're not there. So in such a situation, that is also a ground of eviction, where a person is continuously not using the premises for 6 months prior to filing of the suit. So non-user is a ground for eviction. You may want to identify how many of your tenants are not using. Another ground of eviction would be they're doing additions and alterations. So if there are additions and alterations done where the load-bearing wall has been intermeddled with, or some major changes are done which is impacting your building and its strength and durability. So that is also a ground of eviction. You must know, first of all, what they've done. Some people make a mezzanine floor. Some people create a loft which is not permissible. Some people do. Everybody does it. They enclose the balcony. They do a lot of things which are not permissible under the law. And that is also a ground for eviction. But you must know, first of all, you may take inspection of the premises. under section 28 by writing a notice to your tenant that I want to visit the premises and see. So you can visit the premises, identify what all breaches have been done, and accordingly take action. And if not the same, then you also have a ground of nuisance and annoyance, where if any tenant is causing nuisance and annoyance to the landlord or to any other occupants around, but the nuisance and annoyance cannot be something flimsy. It has to be something strong, and you must have to prove it, that how is their action either annoying the landlord or causing nuisance. So that evidence needs to be gathered, that sometimes people keep things on their there's a common passage outside every tenement. So if they keep articles lying there, or they keep old stuff lying there, due to which it's kind of an encroachment, or if they create a temporary structure which is they are not allowed to do. So if you prove to the honorable court that these acts are causing encroachment or nuisance or annoyance, then that is also a ground for eviction. There are also other grounds for eviction, but I think one of the most strongest grounds for the landlord that have been, because the grounds of eviction are too many. So to sum it up, the last one I'll say is, which is very strong for every landlord, I would say, is bona fide requirement. Now, what happens here is, in most cases, the landlords just send a simple file a case. They don't even need to send a notice. File a case saying that I genuinely and bona fide require the premises for my own purpose, and I don't have sufficient space. Now, it could be for your family or your business expansion or whatsoever purpose. So that is another reason where courts have, and the judgments have been largely and predominantly in the favor of landlords as compared to the tenants. Because the Supreme Court and all of the courts have held that you cannot tell the landlord that no, you stay here or you buy a property here. If it is the landlord's building, and if he needs the premises for his own purpose or for his family or to expand his business, you cannot dictate terms to the landlord. Then you have to just give him the property. So that is another ground which has really been utilized by many landlords. But of course, in that also, if you have too many properties of your own, and if the tenant manages to prove that, then situation differs a bit, because many landlords have quite a few properties. So the tenant says that he doesn't need a property, he anyways have sufficient properties. So the bona fide requirement does not stand. But if the landlord manages to prove that only this first floor property is helpful to me as I'm a senior citizen and I cannot climb beyond that, or I need this property for so-and-so, or my son is coming from abroad and he needs the property. So that particular ground does not require as much of evidence as other grounds do. So that can, if you are seeking eviction, that can also be one of those things. And if you really want, if you're considering that monetary wise it's not lucrative, you can also go in for redevelopment.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bhagwan Devkar.
Pooja madam, question to you. Is a general leave-in license agreement between owner, lessor and lessee.
Right.
Agreement is made for 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
It is registered. All the terms and conditions are also mentioned there.
Right.
My question comes later on this way, that payment is received every month, 1 day or 2 days here, there no question. But I had personal experience in 2-3 times that when the agreement is to be over at the last, say 3 years, agreement is there, but at the end of 32nd or 33rd month, they stop paying the rent. Though the checks are given advance, checks get bounced. And personally you phone them, they will say, my deposit is there. So I wanted to deduct from the deposit. Don't pay me deposit later on. Is it that agreement says, can we do this way? Because what happens when he vacates and when inspection is done, there are payment, electricity bills, gas bills or other bills are there, and even some breakages are there. You are not able to recover that.
Right.
So in that,
right.
what to do?
Right. So in this situation, there are 2 remedies. One, if you already have a post-dated check, and if that is bounced, or if some stop payment is done to that effect, ideally to put pressure and to make your case stronger, you must file a proceeding under Section 138 of Negotiable Instrument Act of check bounce. So rent being one thing, but to put that criminal pressure and to make sure, because the moment a criminal case is filed, there is automatically, nobody wants to get in there, because there the physical presence is required, and it is slightly more dangerous than your civil proceedings. So going in for a section 138 is strongly advisable if on the 32nd month, just before the rent is, the check is bounced or stop payment is done. Even though they say that there is security deposit, you can still move in because that debt is something else and this is something else. The security deposit is for a particular purpose. It is not for, rents and all. It is to deduct if there is some breakage that they've done or if there are some bills that are pending and so on and so forth. So that is one thing. And secondly, you can also, if there are payments not done for past few months or the last, you can move before the competent authority, that is in Bandra, that is in respect to residential properties, or small causes court as far as if there are commercial properties. So for residential is competent authority, for commercial it's small causes court. You can claim your arrears. You can also claim for eviction. So you can ask for both. So competent authority is comparatively fast. If they've not paid the rent, they have at the start they need to mention that they need to ask the court that they should be given a permission for leave to defend. Only if the court thinks that they have a genuine reason to defend the case, the court will allow them. Otherwise, the court will not allow them to even defend the case and directly pass an order that no, you have to pay the rent and you are liable to be evicted. I mean, you have to pay the license fee and you are liable to be evicted. So competent authority is relatively faster and you can move that if it's a residential premises. And at the same time, I suggest you can still go in for section 138 for check bounce because those are separate proceedings and you can move for both.
In short, madam, this means that monthly rent cannot be adjusted against the deposit, isn't it?
No, it can be. It can be. It can be, of course. Why not? But I'm saying if you're saying that security deposit is not sufficient and still there are more amounts that the licensee is required to pay you, then in that case, these are your remedies. Because under section 138, they will anyways, even that law has become very strong recently and there have been amendments in that law as well that even to defend the case, they need to pay some amount, which is less than 20% of the claim amount, which the court will decide at the start of the case itself. So even Negotiable Instrument Act, due to certain amendments, has become comparatively stronger.
Thank you. Generally, we avoid to do that, but then this will be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, or if you can just send a notice as per your agreement. Generally, a notice helps a lot because once they see a lawyer's letterhead, they don't want to get into legal hassle as well. So they anticipate that a case is going to be filed. So might as well just pay the rent and finish it off. Till you don't send a lawyer's legal notice on a lawyer's letterhead, they may not take you that seriously. That is my personal experience.
Right.
Mr.
Thank
Tushar Desai, make your query short. You have asked a question earlier. Mr. Gyan Madan, you are next.
Yeah. See, you said that agreement has to be registered. So my question is, during these COVID times, the seniors, when they are not getting out of the house, how do we register the agreement? Is there a waiver for time that within certain time you can register?
Okay, so even during COVID, there are two things that can be done. There is something called as online agreement registration that has been started. So you can just get in touch with somebody. You can just online. The moment you type it, you will go to a window where there's a template already given, where a ready-made template is there for leave and license. You just have to fill in the details and you can do online registration. That is one thing that people have been doing during COVID. And second thing that people now, I came across another client who had a query that he is physically not competent right now to go out and get the registration done because of COVID, and also he has other comorbid issues. So in that case, even online was not possible for him. He needed the people to come home. So they also come home and do it, the registration. There's a videography done and I believe there are biometrics taken and a lot of happens. The registrar, there's an appointment taken and they actually come, the registration authorities come to your house and they get the document registered. But I just think from what my understanding is the costs are quite high. Like I think it's roughly about 30,000 around that. I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, but from what I recently heard, that you can have somebody to come home and get your document registered, but it's just the amounts for registration are high, or even online registration is perfectly doable.
Within what time we should register? Suppose I sign an agreement today with a stamp. Is there some time period that within this I should register?
No, you must do it immediately, right? If you want the agreement to have the validity from that particular day, you must do it immediately.
The stamp gives you the right to up to 6 months to register.
Yeah. So that is the upper limit. But ideally, to give it binding effect, you must do it at the earliest. You do have time within 6 months. You need to finish the procedure of registration and all that. But the moment if you do it now, then from today to whatever period your license is, you will get that protection.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Gyan Madani.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
He is our national
Yeah.
treasurer. Tell.
Hello. Yes, suppose I got agreement for 3 years and the 3 year is over, and if you pass on letter with each, both the party pass on letter that the same term and condition will be there for the further 3 year, then is it valid, that letter is valid, or you need to go for the again agreement?
I come again. Can you just repeat your question? Just to be sure.
Extension.
His question is, he has an agreement with the tenancy
Which is
agreement
valid
of
up
3
to 3
years.
months, 3
Okay.
years.
3
which
years,
is
3
over.
years.
It
Yeah.
is not a registered one.
Registered agreement.
It is a registered one, and it is for 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, and the 3 year is over.
Okay.
And thereafter, both the parties agrees and they extend it for the further to 1 year or 2 year by passing letter to each other that the same condition which was in the earlier agreement will prevail. Where
Right.
will it be sufficient for the in the law, or we need to go for a fresh agreement?
See, as in your earlier agreement, if you have a clause for
Yeah.
renewal, what really depends is what you have in your earlier agreement. If there is something in your
Yeah.
earlier agreement which says that after 3 years there is a non-renewable clause and still you continue by giving letters to each other, then it won't hold value. Ideally, it would be appropriate to get it registered again, because that will give you the protection of it. After, if your agreement is just for 3 years, you will get protection only for that period of time only. Because that way everybody will just do
And,
that, right?
Yeah, right. And one thing more, my agreement was for when my property is expired on 31st March.
Mm-hmm.
And now in this pandemic time, we could not re-register it, or we could not make a fresh agreement. So how much grace period can be granted?
Grace period for what? For payment of rent or to hold
No,
on?
no,
If they're
not for
holding on,
payment, for registering the document.
so if you get into the agreement today, I believe this 4 months is there for to get it registered. To get it
No, but
registered,
already March it is over.
so you should
In the
have
March,
you should have
third.
done it by now. You should have done it by now. You can do it immediately, right?
Acha. There is no more grace period more than 6 months, no?
No, four. Not more than 4 months.
Not more than
Not
4
more than
months.
4 months. No.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman sir, I think you take over.
Thank you, Pooja madam, for answering all the questions.
Sure.
In fact, in RERA, where tenants are not taken, in RERA, tenants are not, I forgot what I have to say. Tenants are not taken care of in RERA, who are in redevelopment. They have to go to the court, actually.
Right. But if
And,
the project is RERA registered, then also?
Yeah, then also the tenants are not, only the fresh buyers are only allowed to go in the court.
Oh, okay. You're talking about where this earlier redevelopment
Yeah,
happened.
earlier redevelopment. Because
Okay, understood.
so if they are not getting the rent from the developer and they are not able to pay the rent, they have become a very big problem for them.
Right,
So what is
right.
the suggestion for those people who are not getting rent from the developer and they are not able to pay the rent to the flat owners from whom they have taken the flat on rent?
So again, in such situation also, where there are earlier old tenants which are entering into these kinds of documents, most of your permanent, most of your agreements, your PAA or the other agreement that you're entering into, that will have a clause as to what happens if there is a breach or what happens if there is a penalty. So in that respect, if they're not giving you, you can also go in for a specific performance. Depends on as to what exactly are you looking at. Are you looking only for amounts? Are you looking for termination? Are you looking for penalty, or you're looking for possession? Or generally, people go and file a civil suit and they ask for their amounts back. And people have also been entering into commercial suits for that matter.
Oh. But I've seen situations where court has ordered to the developer to pay the rent, but still the developer is not paying the rent, and they are now that tenants, the society members, they don't have money to pay the advocate fees. So what should they do?
See, actually, as far as if they're not paying, then that would be in contempt. Now, at least as far as RERA is concerned, this is not the other courts. What's happening there is when your builder is not being able to pay, because even many such matters where I have got a favorable order and where I'm for the allottee and the builder is required to pay, but the builder is still not paying, even though the order is passed in my favor, the allottee's favor. Then you have to go in for an auction of their other assets. So that is another procedure altogether, where there's a public notice issued and their assets are, the people go in for auctioning that. But what they do is even their other assets are all encumbered assets. So you can't even auction them and get the money out of it. Most builders have a lot of these properties, but they are all encumbered and some mortgages are created and so on and so forth. So you can't even publicly auction those properties. In fact, it happened in respect of one of my matters only. So the execution part is actually a bit weak, even as far as RERA is concerned, that even though orders are coming in the favor, the auctions are happening, but it is taking time and it is taking a considerable amount of time and procedure. But I think if people form a group of it, it is comparatively better as compared to going individually, because then even if you go before the Honorable High Court, because generally in all of these things, when the tenants go before the Honorable High Court, the High Court does hear it and give some relief, at least for sure, as compared to the other tribunals.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chairman, sir, take it further.
Yeah, now I request our Vice President to conclude, say a few words.
Thank you, Mohinderji. Good evening, dear friends. I am very happy to be one of the participants of BI Mumbai Center's 10th lecture meeting, just concluded today. As usual, Mumbai Center has selected one of the key issue of construction sector, that is impact of COVID-19 in agreement related to lease and lieu and license and implication of force majeure clause. The speaker on the topic, Advocate Pooja Thakkar, was right on the point and enlightened all the participants with the intricacy of the subject. I personally and also as Vice President of BI express my sincere appreciation to her. Her answers to every questions was also appreciable. I also thank Mr. Mohinder Rizwani, Mumbai Center Chairman, for inviting me to the lecture meeting and wish him all success in future meetings too. I thank all participants and request you to take good care of yourself and family in this pandemic situation. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President, sir. Now I request Harshit sir to give vote of thanks.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
It was really very informative lecture. Most of us BI members and also from the general public invest in properties and have leased it out. It was important for all of us to know the issues mentioned in today's lecture. I thank Ms. Pooja Thakkar for the interesting lecture. I also thank Sri Baburav Sakrawal, Vice President, Sri Pradeep Raghavekar, Honorary General Secretary Sri Gyan Madhani, and BI members and senior functionaries of BI being present today. I also thank the participants for registering, attending, and raising interest questions. I also thank the back office of BI for coordinating in the organizing today event. Thank you, everyone.
So now I conclude the session. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank